very warm welcome to all of you in this lecture on facility design. We have been discussing various facets of facility design. We already had some lectures on facility design in which we have seen some of the basic aspects of facility design. We have seen that there are so many factors that have to be considered for appropriate selection of a location for setting up of the plant facility or setting up of the service facility. There are so many factors. If we summarize, we have seen there are certain objective factors, certain subjective factors, but basically the objective is to maximize the profit and minimize the costs involved in transforming the raw material into the final product. So, for the choice of a location, we have to take a decision that the procurement should be at the minimum possible cost, as well as the distribution of the final product of the processing or of the manufacturing facility should also be at a reasonably low cost. So, if we are able to minimize these cost functions, that is, we are able to minimize the procurement cost and we are able to minimize the distribution cost. Adding to this, if we are also able to minimize the processing cost of transforming the raw material into the final product, we would be able to maximize our profit. So, that is the basic thing that is required. In one of our lectures, we have gone from top to the bottom, like factors to be considered to select a geographical region in which we are going to set up our plant. Within that region, what is the appropriate community or site where we are going to set up a plant, and within that community also we have gone down to the basics that which area would be best suitable. Then we have seen that identifying the area, that this is the area where we are going to set up, within that specified boundary how we are going to place our machines so that we are able to optimize the production. We have seen that there are different types of layouts available already existing in textbooks. We have seen there can be product type of layout, there can be process type of layout, there can be fixed position type of layout. So, in today's lecture, we are just going to go into a little bit of analytical aspects of facility design. We are going to find out that how do we solve the facility design problems or the location problems, and then we will see that what is a cellular type of layout which is the most commonly used in present day world, and then we will see the layout selection problem. So, today we are going to wind up our discussions on facility design. So, today's lecture basically is a review of the best practices of all the different aspects of facility design. So, let us start our discussion. Analytical methods of location planning. So, the various analytical methods of location planning are affected by the way the distances are measured and the objective function is used. So, basically we want to minimize the distances between the vendors and the factory, and between the factory and the consumers, or between the factory and the distributors who are finally going to let out the product to the retailers who are finally going to sell it to the customers. So, the distances always have to be minimized. If you remember, in one of the previous classes or one of the previous lectures, I have told that whenever a big manufacturer sets up his facility in a particular region, he negotiates with his vendors or with his subcontractors to set up their plants in his vicinity, so that the transportation cost is minimized as well as the distances, the risk is also minimized. Moreover, the supplies become more and more reliable. So the distances are the most important point that have to be considered in the appropriate selection of the location. So for location planning, what are the analytical methods used? So this is a very simple method which may not be directly used in any of the analysis, but it lays the foundation for some other sophisticated methods that can be used for location planning. So on your screen you can read that the various analytical methods of location planning are affected by the way distances are measured and the objective function used. So the objective function can be profit maximization or cost minimization, or it can be the distance minimization or the transportation cost minimization or the optimization of the distance and the transportation cost. So different objective functions can be there. So but all these will depend upon the way the distances have been measured. So today we will see the two different methods of measuring the distance. So these are the rectilinear distance and the Euclidean distance. So the distance measure can be accomplished in these two ways, rectilinear and Euclidean. So with the distance measure involved in a facility location problem is an important element in formulating an analytical model, which I have already told. The measurement of the distance is an important method or tool which is going to guide us in formulating the problem. There are two ways to measure the distance between two facilities. The two ways are either it can be a rectilinear distance or it can be a Euclidean distance. So in this slide we have seen that distances play a very important role in formulation of the problem, or the problem may be a different objective function that we generate and then we work on that objective function to achieve to our objective of maximization of the profit. Two types of distances can be there. It can be a rectilinear distance or it can be a Euclidean distance. So what do we mean by rectilinear distance and a Euclidean distance? That we will see. What is a rectilinear distance? When distance between two facilities is measured along the path that is orthogonal to each other. Orthogonal to each other means at 90 degree. Then that distance is termed as the rectilinear distance. So we can say that whenever the distance measured is orthogonal to each other, then we say that it is a rectilinear distance. So suppose this is one point suppose, and this is the other point. Then we go along this path and then travel along this path, and between these two paths there is an angle of 90 degree. So this is a orthogonal distance. So this we will also try to understand with the help of a diagram, but we need to understand is that when the distance between the two facilities is measured along the path that is orthogonal to each other, then that distance is termed as the rectilinear distance. Now suppose two facilities are located at points represented by x1 y1 and at x2 y2. So there are 2 points. The location of first point is x1 y1 and the location of the second point is x2 y2. Then the rectilinear distance between the facilities will be x1 minus x2, absolute of x1 minus x2 plus y1 minus y2. Now on your screen you can see a very simple diagram. This is a point which depicts x1 y1. This is the first point or the first facility. This is the second location or x2 y2. So the rectilinear distance is measured on by the addition of the absolutes of x1 minus x2 and y1 minus y2. So this is what we call as the rectilinear distance. So you can see that the angle here is 90 degree or it is orthogonal. Now coming on to the Euclidean distance, when the distance measured along straight line path between the two facilities. Now it is not orthogonal, it is a straight line path between two facilities. Then that distance is termed as Euclidean distance. So that type of a distance we call it as the Euclidean distance. So suppose two facilities are located at points represented by this, already we have seen there are 2 points x1 y1 and x2 y2. Then the Euclidean distance between the two facilities will be given by x1 minus x2 by 2 multiplied by 2 plus y1 minus y2 multiplied by 2 and this whole divided by 2. So, what is a Euclidean distance? Let us try to understand it with the help of an example. Now, this is the Euclidean distance, straight line distance or straight line path being followed here, not the orthogonal in which the 90 degree was there, that is not followed here. Here the straight line path is followed, x1 y1, x2 y2, and this is the Euclidean distance on your screen. And how do we calculate it? We calculate it by x1 minus x2 into 2 plus y1 minus y2 into 2 and the whole divided by 1 by 2. So, we will see that how do we get these two expressions. The whole family of distance measure for the distance between 2 points x1 y1 and x2 y2 is defined by the following formula. Now, this is the formula on your screen. You can see this is the whole family of distance measure, or we can say a generalized formula for distance measure between 2 points. This is given by x1 minus x2 multiplied by k plus y1 minus y2 multiplied by k whole divided by k or multiplied by 1 by k. So, when k is equal to 1, if we put it in this expression, when k is 1, k will be 1 here, k will be 1 here, as well as it will be 1 here. So, the final expression will become as d1 is equal to x1 minus x2 absolute plus y1 minus y2 absolute, and this is going to give us the rectilinear distance. So, this is the rectilinear distance between 2 points x1 y1 and x2 y2. So, a generalized equation we have transformed into a specific rectilinear distance equation by putting k is equal to 1. Similarly, we will see that how it can be transformed into a Euclidean distance equation. Now, when we put k is equal to 2, the above equation takes the form as d2 x1 minus x2 into 2 plus y1 minus y2 into 2 multiplied by 1 by 2, or the whole can be divided by, we can say it is divided by 2. So, this gives the measure of the Euclidean distance. So, although we are not solving any problem based on these distances, but these distances help us in order to find out the distances, and those distances would further help us to estimate the procurement cost. For example, the distance is large, maybe the transportation costs would be high, and the distance may be less, the transportation cost would be subsequently less. So, these distances are used in formulation of the objective function, which would further lead into the optimization of the procurement process. So, we have seen that there are two types of distances, the rectilinear distance and the Euclidean distance. Now, we can take a study regarding the facility location, that how to make a judicious decision regarding the location of a facility. Now, the factor rating method is one of the methods which is used for making a decision when we have a choice among different locations. Suppose we have a choice that we can set up our facility in 5 different locations. We have to choose the most optimal location which would give us the maximum profit. So, for that we can use this factor rating plan, in which first we identify the factors and then we give the relative weightage to these factors, and then for individual location we do the analysis, and then finally we are able to choose the best location based on the factor rating method. So, the factor rating method here is explained with the example of deciding the best site out of 3 proposed sites. So, subsequently we are going to see this example in which there are 3 proposed sites. So, the choice is among 3 proposed sites. There exists a choice with us that we have to select one best out of the 3 proposed sites. So, we will see this example how to go about this particular problem. To evaluate these alternatives, like 3 choices that we have, we identify 5 factors, such as now we have identified 5 factors on the basis of which we are going to solve this facility location problem. Now, to evaluate these alternative sites, there are 3 alternative sites that already I have told when we studied the problem in the previous slide. We identify 5 factors such as raw material, that is the first factor, market, that is the second factor, land cost, that is the third factor, community attitude, that is the fourth factor, and transportation facility, that is the fifth factor. So, we have taken 5 different factors on the basis of which we are going to make a decision regarding the best location out of the 3 proposed sites. Now, provide the weights to each factor. Now, 5 factors are there. Some factors may be more significant to our decision as related to the other factors. Now, the factors which are more significant, we are going to give them more weight, but the factors which are less significant, to those we are going to give lesser weights. So, provide weights to each factor. Suppose we allocate 10 points to market, because market governs the business. So, we give the maximum weightage to the nearness to the market, or to the market we can say, and raw material also very important. So, 10 points or 10 weightage of 10 is given to market and raw material, 8 points to land cost, which was one of our factors. You can see land cost on your screen is one of the factors which has been identified. So, a weightage of 8 points has been given to the land cost, 7 points to the community attitude, and 6 points to the transportation facility. So, we are giving the maximum weightage to the market and the raw material, and the minimum weightage we are giving to the transportation facilities. So, what we have done till now is, let us first see what is the problem at hand. So, the problem at hand is that we have 3 proposed sites and we have to select the best possible site. Now, for that selection we are doing a study. In that study we have seen that 5 different factors have been identified and the relative weightage to each and every factor has been given. Now, on your screen you can see we have tabulated the entire problem. We have also the solution, but by and by we will see that how we have achieved or how we have arrived to this particular solution. So, what are the factors? The factors are raw material, market, land cost, community attitude, transportation facilities. So, what are the weights assigned to these? Raw material has been given a weight of 10, market has been given a weight of 10, land cost, the weightage is given 8 points, community attitude 7, transportation facilities 6. Now, we see how to do the calculations. Now, we have at hand location 1, location 2 and location 3, or we can call these as location A, location B and location C. Now, out of these we have to select the best location. Now, how to go about it? Now, rate each alternative for each factor on a scale of 10. Already what we have done, we have given the relative weightage to each of these factors. Now, we have 3 alternatives, alternative A, alternative B and alternative C, or we can say location A, location B and location C. Now, we will rate each alternative, that is maybe location A, we will rate it on all these factors on a scale of 10. Out of 10 we will see that from market point of view, location A, how much points it earn. Maybe if the market is very close to this particular location, then we can say it stands 10 on 10, or it can be 9 on 10, or it can be 8 on 10. So, depending upon different factors that we have identified, each location would now be given marks out of 10. Suppose for factor raw material, the A alternative gets 9 points, B alternative gets 10 points and C alternative gets 8 points. Now, you can see for raw material, location A gets 9 points, location B gets 10 points and location C gets 8 points. That is what I have explained. So, B alternative gets 10 points and C alternative gets 8 points. Tabulate all the above information as given in table. So, in table we have tabulated all the above information. Now repeat the same procedure step 3 and 4 for other factors. So for all other factors we are going to do the tabulation, giving the marks out of 10 for each and every factor to the different locations. Now we have location A, B and C, and we have 5 different factors. So for each factor we are going to give a relative score to all the locations. Then multiply the weights of each factor with the rating of each alternative and record on the lower half of the rectangle under each alternative. Let me repeat. Multiply the weights of each factor. Now weights of each factor, if you remember, we have given relative weightage to all the factors. If you remember, raw material we have given the weight 10. Similarly, market the weightage is 10, but other factors like the land cost or the attitude have been given lesser weightage. So multiply the weights of each factor with the rating of each alternative. Now we have given the rating to each alternative for each and every factor and record on the lower half of the triangle under each alternative. Now you can see raw material has been given the weightage 10, community has been given the weightage 7, community attitude, land cost has been given the weightage 8, transportation facilities have been given the weightage 6. So relative weights are given, marks are given out of 10 for each location. Now for raw material, location A has been given 9 marks, location B has been given 10 marks and location C has been given 8 marks. Similarly, on community attitude, location A has been given 10 marks, location B has been given 9 marks and location C has been given 10 marks. Now we are going, or we can say I have been using the word marks, we can also say these to be points, that so many points have been given to this particular location. Now we multiply the weightage with the points that have been given to that particular alternative. Now location A has got 9 in raw material and the total weightage given is 10. So 10 multiplied by 9 we get 90 here. Similarly 10 marks or 10 points have been given for location B. So 10 multiplied by 10 gives 100. So 100 points have been got by location B on the factor raw material. Similarly, location C has been given 8. So 10 multiplied by 8 we get 80. Similarly, for each and every factor we are going to multiply the weightage with the points which we have given to the different alternatives and we are going to calculate this particular figure. 10 into 8 80, 10 into 8 80 and 10 into 9 90. Similarly, for transportation facilities, let us see, you can remember it, 6 into 8 48, 6 into 7 42, 6 into 10 60. So then finally we add up all these points earned by each and every location. Now location A has got a total point on all these 5 factors as 347. Location B has got 349, a summation of all these points. Similarly, location C has got a summation of 364. So 347 for location A total points, 349 for location B and 364 for location C. So we have seen that by very simple method we have been able to find out that which location is going to give us the maximum points. Now add the score of each alternative and record in front of the table, that we have already seen. The best alternative is that alternative which has the maximum score. If 2 or more alternatives have the maximum score, then those alternatives should be selected and a separate evaluation should be made for those alternatives. So most of the times we may be in a situation that we are only getting the one best alternative. But sometimes it may so happen that there are 2 alternatives having the same score. In such a scenario, we have to do further exhaustive methods, we have to use some further exhaustive tools and techniques to reach to the unit solution or the unity solution or a scalar solution, where we will only have a single particular alternative which is having the maximum score. So we have seen that whenever we are faced with a problem or whenever we encounter a problem in which there are 3 different alternatives or 5 different alternatives available with us, we would first identify the factors on the basis of which we are going to base our selection. Then for those factors we are going to give the relative weightage. What is the relative weightage for all these factors? And then we are going to grade all these choice values or all these alternatives that are available with us, and then finally add up the total points for each and every alternative, and then the alternative that gives us or that scores the highest points would be the selected alternative. So this is a very simple method which is going to help us in selecting a optimal location out of 3 or 4 different locations. Now we can see maximum marks have been scored by alternative C. So location C is getting 364 points. So we are going to select alternative C in this particular case. Now we come on to another important subject, that is the kind of layouts that we are going to use. Just to briefly summarize what we have already covered in types of layouts, we have covered that there are 3 important type of layouts that exist in any manufacturing plant. What are these 3 types of layouts? These 3 types of layouts are the product layout, the process layout, as well as the fixed position layout. All these things already we have covered. Now we are going to cover what is the latest type of layout being used in industry these days, and that is the cellular type of layout. So if we see whatever we have discussed till now, if we link it with what we have discussed just now, we had a problem at hand at which we had 3 different alternatives available with us. Now these 3 alternatives were the 3 locations or the locations that are available with us, and we have to select the best location out of these 3 locations. We have seen a method by which we can select the best location out of these 3 locations. On a scale of different factors, relative weightage of different factors, we have been able to find out the best alternative out of these 3 alternatives that were available with us. Now once we have identified that this is the alternative or this is the location where we are going to set up our plant or set up our facility, then we are faced or then we encounter another important problem, that is that what type of layout of the machines and equipment we have to put in that particular plant. So location has been identified. Now within the location, how to place our different machines and equipment. So basically layout gives us a bird's eye view of the different facilities within the plant or the different services or different machines or different equipment or different rooms or different sections or different shops within the floor. So we have already seen the advantages as well as the disadvantages of certain basic types of layouts. So today we will see that what is a cellular type of layout and what are the advantages and disadvantages of the cellular type of layout. So this type of layout is based on the grouping of parts to form product or part families. Similar parts may be grouped into families based on common processing sequences, shapes, tooling requirements and so on. Now let us break this definition into 2-3 important points. Now the first important point is that this is a layout which is based on a certain form of products or part families. So grouping of parts into different products or part families is the first important thing which is carried out in cellular layout. Now what are the bases on the base of which we are going to classify these parts. The bases are, the parts would be clubbed together in one family if they have the similar type of processing sequence. Maybe circular parts, they require maybe grinding, or they may be requiring a hole. So, maybe on the basis of geometry, on the basis of the processing sequence, or on the basis of, we can say, tooling requirement, or there can be other criteria. Now, let us see these three important grouping criteria one by one. First one, I started with the processing sequence. Now, suppose there is a part which requires 5 different operations, and there is another part which requires only 4 out of those 5 different operations, and there is another part which requires 6 operations, out of which 5 are the same as part 1. So, these 3 parts require similar type of operations, or the sequence of operation is also the same. Then these parts can be clubbed into one part family on the basis of the processing sequence or common processing sequence. So, on the basis of the common processing sequence, the parts can be clubbed together if they require similar operations as well as in the same sequence. So, this will be one criteria for classifying the parts into part families. Then the second criteria is, which already I have given you a brief introduction, that is the shape. All the circular parts may require same types of operation, they can be clubbed together into one part family, or we can say all the similar type of components having similar geometrical features can be clubbed together into one part family. So, we have seen that 2 criteria we have already considered. First one is the commonness in the processing sequence, second one is the commonness in the geometrical features, and third one is the tooling requirement, which may be holding a relatively lesser weightage as compared to the previous 2 points. So, the tooling requirement means the parts which require the similar kind of tools or similar kind of jigs and fixtures may be clubbed together into a particular part families. So, basically what is done in cellular type of layout is, in the first phase, all the parts that are manufactured within the manufacturing plant, they are divided into different part families. So, the criteria for this division is the commonness in the processing sequence, it can be the geometrical features, or it can be the tooling requirements. So, now what we have got is that we have got different part families in which we have parts which are related to one another on the basis of one or the other criteria. The processing equipment required for a particular product family are grouped together and placed in a manufacturing cell. Now, once we have made the part families, now the processing equipment required, or the machines or the tools or the equipment that is required for that particular product family are grouped together and placed in one particular cell. Now, one part family will be going to that particular cell for processing, because all the tools, equipment, machines required for processing that part family have been placed together in the form of a particular cell. So, we would like to understand it with the help of a very simple diagram. The cells then become in effect miniature versions of product layout. Now, these cells which we have identified, one manufacturing cell has been dedicated to one part family, another particular cell has been dedicated to another part family, or a third cell may be dedicated to another type of part family or another type of a product. So, these cells then become a type of a product layout. If you remember, what do we mean by a product layout? A product layout is a layout in which all the machines are in the processing sequence. So, now in this particular case, one particular cell would be dedicated for similar type of products, and it may so happen that all the machines are aligned in a logical sequence of operations only. So, each particular cell can be said to have the advantages of the product type of layout. The cells may have movement of parts between machines via conveyors or have a flow line connected by a conveyor. So, this basically deals regarding the material handling within a particular cell. So, within a particular cell, the material may move from one particular location to another particular location. So, cells may have movement of parts between machines via conveyors or have a flow line connected by a conveyor. Also, this type of layout is used when various products have to be produced in medium to large quantities. So, where this type of this type of layout is used, that is also specified in this point. So, this type of layout is used when various products have to be produced in medium or large quantity. So, it means that wherever the variety is there, if we are producing only a single product, then this type of layout may not be feasible, but when we have a large variety of products to be made, in that particular kind of scenario, this type of a cellular layout would be beneficial. So, in pro variety or wherever the variety required is more, we may opt for cellular type of a layout. And why this is important in present day scenario? Because now the customer wants different or products according to their own choice. So, customers want variety, and whenever the manufacturing company has to produce the products in variety, they may have to go for a cellular type of layout. Now, on your screen you can see a cellular type of layout. So, here we see now this particular region in green can be for one type of product, like flow path of group 111. So, this is a flow path for group 111. So, one part family or one group has been coded as 111. So, group 111 would enter here, it would be going through the grinding section, lathe, and finally the drilling section, and then it would go for the assembly. Similarly, flow path of group 222, there is another part family or another product family which is going through this particular cell, lathe, drill and press. Then there is another flow path for group 333. So, there is another part family or product family which is following this particular path, and finally the sub assemblies here are assembled to get the final product. So, if we see that this is representing, this cell is representing a product type of layout, because after one operation, second operation, and then finally the third operation, and here the sub assembly is ready, which is finally assembled into the final assembly. So, different cells are there, and each cell is dedicated to a specific group of parts which would be manufactured therein. So, now this type of layout would have its inherent advantages as well as some of the limitations. So, now we will see what are the advantages and limitations of the cellular type of layout. So, on your screen you can see the advantages of the cellular type of layout. Now, this results in higher machine utilization, because the machine would always be working on the parts which are dedicated to that particular manufacturing cell. So, the machine utilization would definitely improve in cellular type of layout. Similarly, smoother flow lines and shorter travel distances are expected than for process type of layout. So, this advantage is in comparison to the process type of layout. So, smoother flow lines would be there, and the travel distances would also be minimized. So, the raw or the material which is under process or work in process material would be minimum, means the traveling distance would be minimum, not the material. I have said the material would be minimum, it would not be the material that is minimum, but it would be the distance that the material has to travel, that would be minimum. Similarly, it offers some benefits of both product and process type of layout, because it is a compromise between the two. Now, we can see that this is a compromise between the two types of layouts that we have already studied in the previous class. That was the product type of layout and process type of layout. So, both were having their own advantages as well as their limitations. So, now cellular type of layouts offers the advantages as well as reduces some of the limitations of these two types of layout. So, it compromises on the advantages of the both. So it adds on to the advantages. So offers some benefits of both product and process type of layout. If you remember that for different types of groups or part families, I will again show you, for different types of part families, this is one part family, this is getting processed here, we call it as the flow path of group 111. So this we are saying this is a type of a product layout, because there is a logical sequence of operations. The raw material is coming from here, getting processed, and then finally a sub assembly is ready here. So this is having all the advantages of a product type of layout. And similarly in process type of layout, we have dedicated sections for the different processes. We may have within the machining shop, we may have a drilling section, we may have a machining section, or we may have a shaping section, we may have a turning section, we may have different types of sections within the machining center. So dedication is there, a dedicated shops are there for each and every type of operation. So that is the advantage of a process type of layout. So here we have dedicated cells also, and we have taking the care of the product type of advantages also. So we have a product type of layout submerged in a process type of layout. So we can think of getting a compromise of advantages of both. So offer some benefits of both. So we are going to get benefits of both product type advantages also we are getting, process type of layout advantages also we are getting. It is a compromise between the two. Encourages consideration of general purpose equipment. So we can have general purpose equipment, or we can have, in other words we can say, we can have a flexible equipment. So flexible equipment means that which can be very easily adapted to any change in the product design. So we can have flexible equipment, we can have general purpose equipment. So this type of equipment would help us to adapt to the changes in the product design. So as soon as the product design changes, we would be very easily able to adapt to its design change, and we would be able to produce it, minimizing the total lead time. So there are certain advantages which are offered by cellular layout, and that's why it is being preferred by many organizations these days. Now what are the disadvantages? We have seen advantages. What are the disadvantages? Now we are going to see. So greater labor skills required. So labor skills required would be increased in cellular type of layout, because initially when a person was in one particular section in process type of layout, say, he would be requiring certain skill set, but in cellular type of layout, within each cell there are different machines, there are different equipment. So he needs to be an expert of all those equipment. So greater labor skills would be required in cellular type of layout. So flow balance required in each cell. So in the problem you have seen that there were 3 operations carried out on different work groups. Now if they are not working at the same pace, then one particular cell is making the products at a faster pace, another cell is making the products at a slower pace. So at higher pace, wherever the products are being produced or wherever the sub assemblies are being produced, that particular section would churn out the parts at a faster pace. So the parts have to wait for the final assembly, because until and unless the other particular cells are not matching the speed of that particular cell which is producing at a faster pace, the complete assembly cannot be made. So flow balance required in each cell. So a balance is required, so that if 10 parts are coming out of cell 1, 10 parts should also come out of cell 2 and cell 3, and then these parts, if need to be assembled to get the final product, the pace would be same. So the flow balance would be there. It is not always desirable that the pace should be same, but it should be comparable, maybe varying within certain degree of accuracy or certain degree of a specified level. So if we want that 100 parts per week should be produced, so different manufacturing cells should stick to this particular target of 100, and they should have a flow balance so that they are manufacturing at the rate of 100 parts per week, so that the final product is coming out at the rate of 100 per week. So it has some of the disadvantages of product and process type of layout. It is a compromise between the two. So already we have seen when it is going to offer certain advantages of product and process type of layout, this would also add up to certain disadvantages of these two type of layouts also. So we have seen that cellular type of layout has certain distinct advantages which has made it one of the most important types of layout being used in the manufacturing industry. Now we come on to another important point, that is the layout selection. So on your screen you can read that what do we mean by layout selection. So the basis of selection of a layout is the volume variety analysis. So this can be carried out. So this means layout selection. So layout selection can be carried out by doing the volume variety analysis. So volume means how much of a product we are producing, and variety means how many different types of products we are producing. So when we do this volume variety analysis, we are able to find out that in which scenario which type of layout we should select. So till now we have understood 4 different types of layout. So the first one was the product type of layout, second one was the process type of layout, then we saw the fixed position type of layout, and today we have seen the cellular type of layout. Now we have 4 different layouts available with us, and we have to make a selection that which type of layout should be used in which particular scenario. So this problem will be solved using the volume variety analysis. So you can see volume variety analysis is based on the Pareto's principle, which focuses on the fact that a majority of the resources are consumed by a small fraction of the population. For example, 85% of the wealth of the world is held by 15% of the people. So what we mean to say here is that the majority of the resources are consumed by a small fraction of the population. So this is the Pareto's principle, and this has been explained with the help of an example that 85% of the wealth of the world is held by only 15% of the people. So this principle would be used in doing the layout selection. So this rule also applies to facilities design, that is 85% of the production volume is attributed to 15% of the product line. So one product line, when it is dedicated to one particular type of product, so the maximum volume will come out of that product line. So this rule also applies to the facilities design, that is 85% of the population volume is attributed to 15% of the product line. To decide a layout, a part population analysis must first be completed. So this is the same as the product variety analysis or the variety volume analysis that we have seen in the previous slide. Just we can say the volume variety analysis we have to carry out. Then we have seen that a part population analysis we must be completed when we have to make a selection regarding the type of layout that we are going to adopt in our manufacturing plant. A bar chart between the products or the types of products, a bar chart between the type of products and the quantity to be produced is developed. So how we are going to do this analysis, this is explained in this point. A bar chart between the type of products and the quantity to be produced is developed. This chart we will see in the subsequent slide and try to understand that how this analysis is done. This chart is also called the product quantity chart, and based on this chart, decision regarding the type of layout to be used is taken. So basically, why we are going to do this analysis? We are doing this analysis in order to find out that which type of layout we should use in our industry. So basically what we are doing is we are drawing a bar chart. So what is the bar chart? On your screen you can see the bar chart. On x-axis we have the different products, and on y-axis we have the quantity or the volume. So the volume is there on the y-axis, and the product or the types of products are there on the x-axis. So this we call as the PQ curve. So Q is the quantity, P is the product. So we have area X earmarked here, and we have a area Y earmarked here. So this we call as area Y, and this we call as area X. So in area X, if we see, the quantity is more but the products are less. Only two products are there, A and B, but the quantity of these products is relatively higher. But on the contrary, if we say for area Y, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of product, that is product G, product H, product I and product J, but the volume of these products is comparatively less. Maybe this product G may be having 25% or maybe even less than 25% of the volume of the product A. So what we have seen here in this bar chart is that we represent the volume or the quantity on the y-axis, and we represent the type of products on the x-axis, and then we see that what is the volume of a particular product that is produced. Then on the basis of this bar chart, we have to make a decision that which type of layout should be used. So the layout selection will be carried forward for the products lying in the area X. So we have seen that there is a area X as well as there is a area Y. Now for the products lying in the area X, a product type of layout is recommended. So product type of layout is recommended for those products for which the volume is more. If you remember, in area X the volume was more and the variety was less. So a product type of layout is recommended. And for the products lying in area Y, a process type of layout is recommended. So we can say wherever the volume is less but the variety is more, because in area Y there were 4 different types of products. So wherever the variety is more and the volume is less, a process type of layout is recommended. So in between the area X and area Y, we have to make a decision that which type of layout should be chosen. So on your screen you can see a combination of product and process type of layout is recommended. So we have seen that wherever the volume is large, the variety is less, product type of layout is recommended. Wherever the variety is more but the volume is less, process type of layout is recommended. And in between the two, the best of or the combination of product and process type of layouts can be used. So in today's class we have seen that distances play a very important role in an appropriate selection of a location, in which we have seen that there are two types of distances that are usually used to form a objective function, in which we have seen what do we mean by rectilinear distance, what do we mean by Euclidean distance, and these two types of distances help us to formulate our objective function which could be profit maximization or minimization of the total procurement or distribution cost. Then we have seen a problem in which there were 3 locations and we have to choose the most optimal location. So the problem was solved considering 5 different factors. Each and every factor was given the relative weightage, and then the 3 locations or 3 alternatives were given the points based on these 5 factors, and then the particular location which scored the highest point was selected as the most optimal location. Thereafter, after the selection of the location, we have seen that what is the type of layout. Cellular layout was considered today. Three different layouts we have covered in the previous lectures. We have seen what do we mean by cellular layout. We have also considered the advantages and disadvantages of the cellular type of layout. Then finally, when we are faced with a problem of selecting the most optimal type of layout, out of the four types of layout, what is the criteria we should follow? For that, we have seen a method which helps us in order to identify or order to select the most optimal type of layout. So, we will carry forward our discussion related to some other aspects of industrial engineering in the subsequent lectures. Thank you.